To trope or not to trope? That is the question. And whether you choose to behold its merits, align its purpose, or disavow its petulance and codify its moroseness, one will be drawn for all time. Conversations will be had, and its sacred keeper, the one AF Stewart, may reside over this procedure, but make no mistake, it is you, the Horde, playing judge, jury, and executioner, and while civil tongues will prevail, the question remains, even if sullen by blood, is it time to answer the call? To trope or not to trope?
Okay, so welcome back to a new episode of Trope or Not to Trope. And we're talking about the Secret Heir trope tonight. And our guest is Samantha J. Bryant. And she's going to be defending the Secret Heir, and I am going to be trashing it. Because this is one I don't like very much, to be honest. But anyway.
Okay.
But anyway, and so we're going to have some fun tonight. And before we start, I'm just going to, and everybody on Facebook, if you want to send us a star, you get entered into giveaways and gift thingies and have some good times. So toss a few stars our way if you're over on Facebook. Unfortunately, you can't do that on YouTube, but
throw a star to your Witcher, something like that.
That's good. Yeah, Joe should say, well, we might get copyright strike if we do that.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Throw a star to the indie. There we go.
There, that works.
Okay, so we are talking about the Secret Heir trope tonight, and the reason why I'm not a particular fan about this is because I'm kind of a history buff, and to me, the Secret Heir is kind of unrealistic in a lot of ways, because historically royals kept track of their heirs. I mean, even the illegitimate ones. Now, to me, it would make a little more sense if the Secret Heir was an illegitimate heir. But then that would cause, inheritance issues if you were using more of a medieval fantasy, especially in medieval type fantasy. But so what would your take on making the Secret Heir be realistic?
So first, mostly the stories I enjoy Secret Heir plotline in are not trying to be realistic. These aren't historical fiction for the most part. They're gothic, or they're romance, or they're mysteries, or those kinds of things. So they're not really trying to be realistic. They're trying to be fun and tropey, right? Hitting that that high drama moment that having an unexpected heir causes. Um, I could definitely see your point when it comes to royalty, but there are other kinds of heirs. Even if all you're inheriting is grandma's little shoebox of a house, there could still be contention as to who actually is the heir, who gets it. So it makes for some very good drama.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, especially if you're doing something like a billionaire romance and suddenly a Secret Heir pops out of the woodwork to try and take the fortune away from the MC or something. I don't know. I don't write romance, so I'm not sure how the plots go in the billionaire romance world. But so yeah, and I do agree that the Secret Heir, especially if the main character is the Secret Heir and he suddenly finds out he's a Secret Heir, that can be good for shock value and a sense of a, kind of moment in the plot. But I find it can often come across as kind of a bait and switch if it's not done well. So, how would you handle that sort of a reveal?
Right. So yeah, I can definitely see where that it could feel that way, that like you go in expecting to read the story about this one particular person inheriting things and stepping into their new life, and then oh no, there's someone else. So I guess it depends on the kind of story how much that bothers me though, because, in some kinds of stories, we're definitely trying for that kind of drama, and you want that conflict because otherwise it's going to be too straightforward a story. Um, for the kind of story it is. I'm particularly fond of the hidden or secret heir in like gothic kinds of stories, right? Where you can think, even there's even a little bit of it in like Wuthering Heights, where dad mysteriously brings Heathcliff home and makes him part of the family, which then causes, generations of chaos, in a great book. And it's never actually said, but there's definitely room for us to think that maybe Heathcliff was dear old dad's son, and that's why he brought him home, an illegitimate son. Um, so yeah, it's sorry, I think I forgot what the starting question was because I wandered too far around.
How to avoid making it a bait and switch.
Okay, yeah. So I think the thing that a secret heir can really do for a story is give you an interesting in and give you like that fish out of water moment. So if my main character is the heir, then they've been brought into this world that maybe they didn't know that they were an heir, right? It's unexpected, like, they're at the reading of the will, a lawyer calls up and sends you a letter, all these things that happen often in spooky stories with big family secrets, right? And you get there and you're at the reading of the will with 18 other people who all thought they were inheriting, and they're like, who is this person? And then there's all the mystery to solve there. So you've got your eye of the outsider looking in at this world. Or if it's the other way around, right? The secret heir disrupts the world of our main character by showing up. Then, that can make a story fresh and interesting too.
Right.
So I just think it's a great mine to find tons of a good or line of drama in.
Yeah, I could see how it would work better in some genres than others, like Gothic. I can see how it would work better in the genre, definitely, because Gothic tends to travel a little higher into the melodrama than
Right.
other.
Melodrama is expected.
Yeah, that's true, and I could
Yeah.
see how it might have be okay in a mystery as well, because you do sort of create those sort of red herrings with the secret heir in a mystery. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so the other thing, that sometimes happens when you have the secret heir and people don't really do it well, it's, the plot tends to jump through hoops to make the main character the secret heir. It's suddenly like, main character was one thing, and then the plot just jumps through all these hoops to make the main character suddenly this secret heir or special person, and everyone just kinda goes along with it. And that's so how would you go about avoiding that sort of a scenario?
Yeah, I think the key there is that why would the other people just accept it, right? If I show up out of nowhere, no one's ever heard of me, and I'm going to inherit the mansion now, there's going to be all kinds of contention, people looking into my background or confronting me in the hallway to talk to me or whatever to find out who exactly I am. There's no reason for the other characters to just go along with it. And I think you can avoid some of that also by letting the main character be just as at a loss. Like, I don't know, he just used to eat at the restaurant I worked at, and I guess he thought I was nice. And another thing that comes up in a lot of these stories is the secret heir who doesn't know ahead of time that they're an heir. They get a family secret, right? They find out something about their own origins, and what they've always assumed was true about themselves isn't true. That this rich guy wasn't just some rich guy, but was actually related to them, or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think, it's just fun.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes though, those family secrets can slip down into cliche too, so you have to be
Oh,
careful about
true.
that as well. Because yeah, sometimes they just like throw in a family secret. Oh, let's throw in 3 more while we're at it, and it gets out of hand. So, so sometimes I find, especially within fantasy stories, when you're doing the secret heir fantasy stories, and you've got that sort of medieval um, throne or medieval kingdom secret heir as well. It seems like the author didn't have enough confidence in their main character that they had to add something in and make their character special by making them the heir or making them the secret royal or making them this or whatever. So, what do you have to say about that particular plot point?
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of these stories do take like the person was living a very ordinary life, and then all of a sudden, ta-da, they're all shiny princess. Even something like oh gosh, what was the thing called with Anne Hathaway where she found out that she was a princess, and
Oh, The Princess Diaries?
is that what it was called? I
I
can't
think
remember. It's
so,
been a
something
long.
like that anyway.
Yeah, which, is along these lines of like, finding a secret part of yourself. I think what I like better is when the person didn't fit in what was their ordinary life. And then the finding out that they're a secret heir connects them to another part of their self, their family, their heritage or whatever, and all of a sudden it all makes sense. I could think of there's a series by a couple of friends of mine, Emily Lavin Leverett and Sarah J. Adams, called the Istafad Chronicles, and it's a fairy court sort of series. And the main character has grown up in the human world with no idea that Fae is in her background. And I really like the way they handled that in her story, like all these things that never made sense and made her life not work suddenly makes sense when she finds that missing piece. So I think that's a good tactic to take, is to, make it something that finishes or answers something for the character.
Mm. Yeah, I do think that works a little better when you're dealing with human to like something like the Fey realm or human to a different sort of magical kingdom sort of thing as well.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, but you do have to be careful about that because that and the chosen one trope can go into directions you don't want it to go. So anyway, um, so actually that leads into the next question, which is secret heirs to long lost, destroyed kingdoms or kingdoms that people didn't know about. I mean, I find that can be marginally better because you do have a lot more room to play, I think, with that. But sometimes it can feel like cliche or even can go too far into plot armor. It's like, why is the MC suddenly so powerful? Oh, because they're the secret heir to this and this kingdom that was destroyed long, long time ago, right?
Mhm.
So, um, and also, sometimes you can seem like there's no real point to it because, the kingdom's gone, there's nothing there. All you're inheriting is trouble, really. So, how would you go about mitigating that kind of an issue?
Yeah, that's one that irritates me as well, that, they, that I guess the idea of, blood being the really important thing, especially if we're talking about human characters. I can buy it a little more when we're talking about, like, the Fae or something, but, if we're just all humans, then, just because my daddy was some particular fella doesn't make me instantly more special than any other human, make me more capable of running this kingdom or saving this planet or whatever it is I'm supposed to do. So, I think that's one where we might agree that that's not great use of the secret heir.
Okay, so another problematic thing that I think that happens sometimes is that the secret heir suddenly becomes a shortcut to being accepted by the upper class, and that can come across if you don't do it properly as kind of elitist. And it's like
Mhm.
they weren't good enough when they weren't royalty, but now that they are royalty, it's like they're somehow more special. They're somehow more accepted. And it becomes
Right.
very elitist. And honestly, it kind of removes some tension as well, because there would have been more conflict had they stayed not royal. If they, like, say, if they're taking over, even if they're just taking over an inheritance.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess that's a desire some people have to just kind of tie in loose ends and make sure that everybody ends up fitting just right at the end of stories. I don't much care for that myself. I think life is raggedy and messy, and it should be in stories as well. And when we take somebody who hasn't been a part of a world and put them in it, and especially if we're putting them in it in kind of a new leadership role, or even just, the kind of leadership that seems to come automatically just because you're very rich. Um, it's it's not going to go well. And some people, I think it can be used for some social commentary, showing how in the world that they've come to now, the people who are accepting them are maybe not doing it for the best of reasons, that it's all just about seeing an opportunity for yourself, making sure you protect your own position, or looking for your chance to stab them in the back later by making sure you stay close. um and then the people who don't accept them, there's room for an arc there of them coming to accept the person for some reason other than just their parentage, that they come to, like that grudging respect kind of thing, where like, all right, I have to admit it, you actually do have some good ideas about how to fix this problem we've been having.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that also brings up another point, especially if you're using this trope in fantasy, is there's not enough politics involved in some cases. A lot of authors just sort of gloss over if they're doing like secret heir, secret royal heir, or even a secret nobility heir, or something like that. They're just kind of glossing over the politics. There's no schemes, there's no political upheaval, there's no manipulation. Um, and there's so it doesn't always come off as realistic, like I said in the beginning.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if that's the secret heir trope's fault though. That sounds like, weaker stories on a lot of fronts. If you're not making it feel like it matters, that's a problem no matter what kind of tropes you are using. So I don't know if you could blame that one on the secret heir trope. It might just be some weak writing that happened to also use this trope.
but I mean, I'm just saying that if you're going to use a secret heir, you're going to stick it in like royalty or nobility, then you better have some politics, or don't bother using the secret heir.
Right, or lower the scale a little bit,
Mm.
and make it, the secret heir to a bookshop or something. It doesn't have to be a kingdom. I just saw an ad the other day for a romance novel that's basically using the secret heir, right? Where a young woman inherits a bookshop from her grandmother, and it turns out she inherited it in shared with a young man who always helped the grandmother with the shop. And so now she and this young man have got to work it out together, and it's a romance. So I assume
Yeah.
they will work it out together.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. They're definitely falling in love.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what you expect it to go with.
Mm.
So, it can be done.
Okay, so another thing that sometimes pops up that I'm not particularly fond of is when you either have too little backstory or too much backstory about how the heir was lost, or how why he's just popped up uh, in the story and things like that. So how do you handle the backstory?
That's a tricky one in almost any story, isn't it? You've got to have the right amount, and that's going to vary by story. I guess, how interesting is the story of how the secret heir came to be. If it's just, the king got randy one night and slept with someone who wasn't the queen, that's not a very interesting story, right? But,
Well,
if there's like
it depends on the backstory of the randomness, but we won't go into that because
So, it depends on how interesting is that backstory, and yeah, you've got to balance it, the right amount of backstory for the kind of story you're telling. If what you really wanted to tell was the backstory, why isn't that just the book you're writing, you know?
yeah. So another thing you see often, is the secret heir, if you're doing history or fantasy, is that the secret heir is used to legitimize some sort of rebellion against the government.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, I get that kind of. but still, it seems a little bit more of like kind of a crutch when you're doing that sort of a storyline. So, what do you think about that?
It can be fun. Like one of the things I already mentioned that I like about the Secret Heir is that outsider status, the person who's not a part of this world who's come in. And the outsider status comes with unusual views. You grew up in another circumstance, your expectations are different, and you haven't been steeped in this particular stew for your whole life, so you see it with that beginner's eye. And sometimes that can mean that you see it with a different kind of insight. So that can be really good in a story. I have liked a lot of stories that have done it that way. Um it just has to be earned in the story. If it's just like I show up and because my eyes are brown and everybody else in this kingdom has blue, I am now, the very special one and everybody will listen to me. That's not convincing to me in the same way of like I earned that respect by having real insight and making real changes.
Yeah, that's a good point to having earned it, because sometimes that doesn't happen in a lot of stories. Anyway, because
Yeah, there's
if
this
you,
whole wish fulfillment, right? Of
yeah,
like, gosh, I wish I had a rich grandmother who would suddenly leave me a fortune, that kind of thing. And I think that's part of the appeal of these stories is that wish fulfillment. But, for it to be it still needs to be a good story, not just tell me about your little wish.
yeah, yeah. Again, that's kind of a problem with the chosen one trope as well. You really need to have it earned, and I definitely agree with that. So, another variant of the secret heir is that when the hero or the main character, whatever, finds the secret heir or a relative or other sort of relative of the villain without any sort of reasoning behind it. It's like, why is he the relative of the villain? Oh, because we want angst with our character. We couldn't think of any other way to do it. So, how would you go about if you did want to have the secret heir slash villain relationship?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is one that ends up being very surfacey sometimes where, it's like, Iago, in Othello, who you never find out why he's so upset, he just is. Um, and I think our villains need to have really clear motivations and specific reasons for why they do what they do, just like our heroes do. And so I think that's often a failure to fully imagine the villains as characters instead of just making them an obstacle that's not any different than, say, a hole in the road or an earthquake. That those are obstacles that don't have to have motivations. That hole in the road wasn't out to flatten your tire, but it did. But when my obstacle is a person, it's there has to be some there. We have to actually give them motivations, reasons, goals that the appearance of this secret heir is messing up. So this person comes in and that changes the plan. And so therefore they have to either get the secret heir in on their plan with them to serve it, or they have to get rid of them. And there, now you've got some tension that I can work with.
Yeah. Another sort of variant on that, the secret heirs related to the villain thing, is that sometimes it's used as kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy to destroy the villain, which is something I don't kind of like. I mean, you see it a lot in some of the older fantasy books. Hopefully they've gone away from that in some newer ones. But so, what do you think about that? The self-fulfilling prophecy is the secret heir.
Hmm. So can you explain again? Yeah,
I
so I'm
well,
not sure I quite get it.
it's like, if you've got the villain, there's some sort of prophecy that his son will kill. It's like the Greek mythology is a
Oh,
good,
I see.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then it turns out that this person, that is the leader of the rebellion or something is actually the secret heir and will kill the villain because it's
Mhm.
all predestined.
Yeah. I often wonder, with how often that comes around. I wonder how much Secret Heir tropes are us as authors and as society just trying to deal with generational trauma and trying to fix the sins of the fathers, as they say, and that sort of thing. Because it comes around a lot in these kind of stories, and sometimes it feels really pinned on, like a little corsage that doesn't go with the dress. So I don't know. I think that particular one is probably one that I would avoid in my own writing because I find it irritating.
Well, we agree on that. We avoid the predestined or either
Yeah, I'm not going to avoid
subvert it.
secret heirs altogether, but certain iterations.
Yeah, or subvert the prophecy thing because that works
Yeah.
as well. Okay, so
Well, that's the fun in prophecies, right? Is how they can be misinterpreted. You think the prophecy means this, but it actually means this. Yeah.
yeah. So sometimes you'll get the secret heir reveal telegraphed too much. There's too much foreshadowing. The reveal falls flat because it's pretty much the main character has a neon sign above his head saying, "I'm the secret heir."
Right, some physical characteristic that's too specific or a specific skill or yeah.
Yeah. So how do you avoid that?
Well, I guess it depends on if you want to avoid it, right? I guess in some stories I could see you want to make it obvious because the point of the story isn't that this kid is a secret heir or this person. I made it a kid because it sounded like a young adult plot to me. But but you if that's not really the point, if the real story starts once we've got them in the situation and then the real conflicts are going to begin, then maybe we do want to just telegraph it and get that over with because it's really just the mechanism we're using to get the character in the place where we want them to be, with the background we want them to have so that the real adventure can start. In that case, telegraphing it is great. But if you're wanting it to be a big reveal later in the story and it's not supposed to be obvious from page 1 that this is the secret heir, then yeah, you've got to come up with other things you can do. And what there's a difference between breadcrumbing and hinting so that when the reveal comes it doesn't feel out of left field, and flashing a neon sign across the person that says it's me.
Yeah. Yeah, the Blade Runner sequel, Blade Runner 2049, actually did an interesting twist on that. They kind of telegraphed the main character. I mean, the whole thing was the main character is the secret heir, right?
Right.
And then you get to the end and you find out, no, we were kind of just pulling your leg on that. He's not really the secret heir at all. So that was kind of an interesting twist. You mean it almost kind of leaves you disappointed that the
Right. Yeah,
it,
so it's not a trope you especially enjoy, but when they twisted it too much, you were like, "Now wait."
But I mean, I enjoyed the fact that they did the twist, right? It's like
Mhm.
I'm kind of disappointed because this is what they were building to, and it's not happening. And it's like, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right?
Right.
So I
And
mean,
I enjoyed that in that I didn't want to like that movie because I'm a big fan of the original of Blade
yeah,
Runner, and I feel like the existence of this sequel ruins the ambiguous ending of the first movie because it decides whether they survived or not, and reveals whether Decker was or wasn't a replicant. So I feel like the sequel kind of ruins the first movie. But if I can just regard them as two separate things, then I really enjoyed that one. And it was a nice twist. You go through, you're expecting this, you're led down this way. There was a very effective red herring.
it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so another thing that sometimes happens when you have a secret heir, sometimes, especially in gothic fantasy or even sometimes in mystery, everyone now wants to kill the secret heir character.
Hmm.
And it's who can he trust? But sometimes if you don't do it well enough, it kind of degrades the other character's intelligence, or it simplifies the plot or the politics involved. And so, how would you avoid these pitfalls?
I think a big thing is just not having all the other people have the same opinion. So, did you see Knives Out?
Not yet. It's on my list to watch
Uh,
a lot of
well,
other movies.
Knives Out is a Secret Heir story. Yeah, we get to the reading of the will and we find out somebody completely unexpected is actually inheriting the stuff. And we've got a fairly big extended family as the cast of characters there, and almost all of them are greedy and wanted whatever they thought they were going to get inheritance wise, but the way they go about trying to manipulate circumstances, the way they try to fix the problem and get rid of this unexpected heir, are really different. So each character tries something different, and I think that's part of what made that story work. The wider family wasn't unified, all being like, well, if we just all get together and kill her, then problem solved. That maybe some of them would have liked to have done that, but other ones had other ideas.
Yeah. Well, the group conspiracy murders never work anyway, so uh,
Right, two people can keep a secret if one of us is dead.
yeah, but I mean, it's like nobody ever does exactly their part when you have these big group conspiracy, and someone always talks, someone
Mhm.
always brags about it. That's how the
Or
murders take
someone
place.
decides that, now that we got rid of this obstacle, how about I get rid of you,
Mhm.
my next obstacle?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Two ways is better than three ways when you're splitting the money.
Yes.
Okay, so in a lot of secret air plots, the secret air gets into a situation and he's over his head. Now that seems realistic to me, but then a lot of times they'll just, oh, we'll make him learn all the rules and all the things he has to know in this very, very short period of time, and everything will be fine. And that again, especially if you're dealing with a royal court or a complex noble house or something in fantasy, it
You're like, a
just
training montage is just not gonna do this for me.
yeah. It's like, because I mean, there's a lot of complexity in, especially if you're doing royal court with fantasy. And if you're suddenly the king now and you don't know what you're doing, one mistake can lead to war, can lead to things and all those things. So it- I can see why people would want to speed it up, but I don't find that very realistic at all. So how would you go about creating that sort of a fix?
So I guess you've got a few possibilities. If your particular character comes in with skills from their life up to now, those skills can end up being more applicable than you think, right? And so, even though you were a cosmetologist back in Washington before you became the Princess of Segovia or whatever, um, something that you learned in that life ends up being very useful in this life, and you make a go of it. You can also go with the outsider status gives you some forgiveness for breaking rules, and they have great personal charisma and charm, and therefore are able to overcome these moments. You can give them a mentor. um I like the unexpected mentor. Like, instead of like the ground vizier being useful to you, it's the butler, the or valet. I think it's a valet. I obviously I'm a rich lady who knows these things. But the person who attends to you personally and is talking with the other servants and everything can kind of give you some information on the side, and so you can find things out. So yeah, I do think one of the problems the stories run into is wanting to rush that, and it can make for an exciting dramatic thing that, like, the decision moment comes and it doesn't matter that you didn't have time to learn everything you needed to learn. Here's the decision moment. Do the best you can and we'll deal with the consequences. What I don't like is when we did that and the decision they make is exactly right and there aren't any consequences, right? That decision needs to
Mm.
have flaws because obviously they haven't learned the whole situation yet. So
Yeah.
they're gonna make a not quite perfect decision, somewhere between not quite perfect and disastrous decision.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
definitely gotta ditch the perfection because
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense if you've suddenly got someone who was not born into the complexities of whatever situation they're now in to be perfect all of a sudden. So, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. So, this the secret heir can also be a shortcut, especially in fantasy, for the noble character stereotype, where your heir suddenly he's the heir to the good royals, and the current ruler is a usurper or a bad royal, and so that kind of is just like it's very stereotypical. So, how would you avoid going down that stereotype route?
I think just avoiding that whole black and white binary, right? That, the good and the bad royals, they're all royals. They're all self-important, entitled, rich people. So whether they feel good or bad depends on where you're standing. And so I would try to gray up both groups, so that there isn't clearly one side is the good ones and one side is the bad ones, but that both of them have a point. And over the course of the story I should probably start cheering for one side or the other as the reader, but it doesn't have to be obvious from the first page, and it probably shouldn't be obvious from the first page.
Hmm. Yeah, and also I would think that your heir character would also be like maybe he doesn't like either side when he figures out what's going on.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like,
like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
dear old daddy might have been biologically my father, but yeah, I'm not quite sure he was all that great either.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, so, I guess you'd call that one the third way. Like, you're given an either or and you're like, neither actually."
yeah, okay. So another pitfall you can fall into with that particular stereotype is the replacement heir. That's what I call it. So it's when the rightful heir isn't a very good ruler for whatever reason, and so powers behind the throne or whatever suddenly pull out the secret heir from out of thin air. Now that to me doesn't exactly feel very
Like the man in the iron mask or something, like Secret
yeah.
Twin?
Yeah, something like that. Because it's like all of a sudden, like, oh, wait a minute, like Star Wars.
Oh,
Um,
yes. There is
when
another.
yeah, there is another. It's like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on here? Now they
You gotta
actually
have your
pulled,
air and your spare, right?
yeah, they pulled that one kind of out of the hat a little bit, and but they did make it work in the end. But still, so how would you go about, just kind of like if you wanted to have a secondary replacement heir, how would you go about doing that without making it feel like it's been just plucked out of thin air?
Mhm. So I can think of a few different ways to approach it with, like, you know, does my replacement heir know and want this position, or no and then that means they absolutely don't want this position. So I'm pulled in to try to replace you because, the powers that be think you're not doing a good job, but I don't actually want to take this job. So maybe I work with you instead. I think just letting the characters buck against whatever the expectations are, and do something that isn't right in line with what they were bred for or expected to do when they get there. Yeah, do something different.
Okay, so we have a question.
Okay.
So, how do you handle the cultural divides with royal examples, Saudi princes versus English royals? Is there more research you have to do, a sensitivity reader you need, or is it just stay on the side of farce, or is that never a true concern?
Well, I have to say for me, I haven't written anything with royals. I don't find royals interesting. So, not so much a concern for me. The Secret Heir story that I'm working on is a gothic. And uh I did end up doing a fair amount of research about like inheritance law, and if especially since I've got it set in 1890 in an imaginary place in England, so I could do some research into what actually was possible under English law at the time, and then use that as my starting point. But I didn't go with royals, I just went with rich dudes.
Mm. Well, from someone who has done historical sort of royal stories here and there, it doesn't if you're doing something other than like a Western culture, you definitely need to do your research. Um, and yeah, you might want to get sensitivity readers if you depends on what culture. Like if you're doing like say an Asian culture and you're a white person,
Mhm.
you definitely want to get sensitivity readers. Um,
Yeah, I guess in fantasy, you can get away with making up a culture, but
yeah.
so often when we make up cultures, whether we mean to or not, we're pulling from aspects of real cultures, and so sensitivity still matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that, like, with Western, like, for me, for instance, like, Western royals are far more familiar to me, with the history. So I have a lot more context to put into those stories because I know a lot more about that. As if I was doing an Asian kingdom, for instance, in a story, then I definitely have to do a lot more research into what would be the cultural norms in a royal court. Because the royal
Mhm.
court in China, say, in let's say take the Ming Dynasty or whatever dynasty you want to take, the Chinese, their royal customs, their royal court was vastly different than, say, the Tudor court of England. Now, I am
Mhm.
vastly more familiar with the Tudor court of England than I would be the Ming Dynasty court, so I'd have to do a ton more research. But like even if you do think you have a certain insight into the culture of a certain uh, aspect, you will research it and find no, 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 you don't really know it at all. And you will find complexities and things, and definitely things that can't go in the book. But
I guess it depends on what kind of book it is.
well, yeah, unless you're writing erotic romance, some of these things can't go in the book. Trust me. Okay, so okay, now we come to another sort of thing. This one I like a little bit more because it's way more realistic, especially if you're doing fantasy, and that's the manipulated secret heir. And but the risk you run with this one, I think, is that the character that's being manipulated, you run a risk of making them appear weak or stupid. And that kind of happened, for instance, in the Game of Thrones TV show, where with Sansa, the character of Sansa, and she's being manipulated by Littlefinger. I mean, granted, that sort of didn't work out well for Littlefinger in the end,
Mhm.
but for a long time, that made the character of Sansa very unlikable, really. So, how would you go about manipulating your secret heir without making him unlikable?
That is tricky, yeah, because they need to. I guess one way that stories often do it is by letting the manipulation go on for a long time and start when the character is very young. So you think about like the retelling of Rapunzel that Disney did recently, Tangled,
Mm,
recently relatively speaking. Had a bit of that going on, right? Where the princess was stolen as a baby and raised by the villain. And so they she had years to establish her control and her manipulation and to guide this young woman into what she believes. So I didn't feel like that meant that the girl was an idiot. How can you see outside the box you've always been in, to know that there is anything else possible? So So I think that's one way around it is, letting the influence be long and start when the character is really young. But that can be tedious in a book, to have to go that long. I guess you can try to summarize a little, do a few flashback scenes to show us the progress and not make us watch the child from the birth until they get old enough to be interesting.
Mm. Yeah, but that is an interesting variation though, if the manipulator is actually the one who either stole the child or is the one that was given custody of the child to hide them, and they have manipulated them for their own gains their entire lives. Now that would be an interesting variant. I like
Yeah,
that.
that could be fun.
Okay, so another form of the secret heir is the one that's suddenly back from the dead, which has its own problems because, oh yeah, why did everyone think you were dead and now you're not dead anymore?
Right.
So how would you handle something like that?
Um, well, I think it's going to depend on what kind of story we're doing. Sometimes that could just be fun. I think you're going to have to have some clear ideas about how the mistake that the person is dead, how that mistaken belief came to be, and where they've been all this time and why they didn't come back. I hope we're not tying it with amnesia too, because then that's just way too much. Uh, I guess you could do it like Simba, right? Where you went away as a young person convinced that you'd ruined everything, it was all your fault, and then you've just stayed hidden and let people think you were dead because that seemed easier. Um, so I can think of storylines where I can buy it, but I think I would go carefully
Mm,
because it could just get stupid.
yeah, yeah. It might work in a gothic novel, like say if he was lost at sea or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, so like I could see it more in a historical, I think, than
Yeah, I think it's
anything.
harder to disappear in a contemporary story than it might have been if you set this a few hundred years in the past.
Okay, so and then you have the pretender variant of the secret heir is like when the main character is he the secret heir or isn't he the secret heir? Is he lying? Is he trying to
Ah,
con
Princess
the
Anastasia.
yeah, that's a good example. Is he a
Yeah.
con man trying to bilk the inheritance away from the true heirs? Um, and again, that can be very tricky. It can also come off as bait and switch twist if you're go one way and then suddenly switch it. So how would you go and handle that sort of a plot line?
Well, I think that could be a lot of fun. I like the idea of a con artist, setting themselves up to try to claim this heritage they don't have, only to find out that maybe there's some truth to it. Like they get there and they're like, "Oh, wait. I do have that birthmark," or or I can do that special skill in this magical world that, is supposed to be a sign that I'm descended from dragons or whatever it is. Um, that could be a whole lot of fun to play with, so that my main character came in with one motivation and then it twist on them. I think that could be a way to keep it interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, and then you've got the secret heir problem where the character knows he's the secret heir but lies to everybody else,
Mhm.
and that one has because a lot of times when the truth is revealed, the other people just accept they're not mad about the lie, which you know that's not realistic at all. Because if someone's been lied to, they're going to be mad at you.
Yeah, I think that comes about because in a lot of stories they keep the reveal for pretty near the end, and then they don't leave much time for everybody to deal with their feelings about the reveal. It's like the reveal happens, the big violent thing or big exciting thing or whatever it happens, and then the book ends. So we don't leave room for those feelings. So that could be an interesting thing to play with, is to, let the reveal happen early enough that we have time to see the fallout and everybody trying to deal with the feelings of betrayal and the hurt of having been lied to and all of that.
Mm. Yeah, and make sure there is fallout because
Yes.
okay, and you do have a kind of a romance variant on that one too, where the love interest knows he's a secret heir, especially you've got he's a royal, but he's pretending to be a commoner sort of plot line.
Mhm.
Um, and yet the love interest, when she finds out that she's been lied to, is not mad. I don't like that at all. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't buy that one. I guess, in a romance, I'm willing to give a lot of leeway, because of the expectations of the genre and that we're moving towards that happily ever after. But it makes it hard for me to cheer for the characters if they just roll over and take it when they've been treated badly.
Yeah. I mean, I can maybe buy into forgiveness because, like you said, it is a
Earned
romance.
forgiveness though,
Yeah,
not just like,
earn.
yeah, you
Yeah.
have to do something to earn it. It's not just out of the goodness of my heart that I forgive you.
Yeah, because I mean, don't forget he's a royal, because so he's probably going to be a little arrogant and elitist to begin with.
Right.
So if he's lying to you from the get-go, I mean, there better be a good apology behind the if you're going to forgive him.
And yeah, and you're gonna have to end in a place that gives you reason to expect that that won't be the way it goes from here on out. That lessons were learned and that things will be different.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
just oh, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah. Either that or don't sign the prenup, girl.
Yes, negotiate a better prenup.
Okay, and sometimes you also have the opposite line problem in with the secret heirs is that the MC or the secret heir character was lied to all his life, and then after say an initial shock, he's fine with it again. It's like I don't like that. It's like no, there has to be consequences for these lies.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement on that one that you know, people lie and your characters can lie, but you're leaving a lot of story fodder just on the ground unexplored if you don't let the consequences arise and get some new conflicts out of that.
Mm. Okay, and this one's kind of just a nitpick for me in romance.
Okay.
It's that when you have fake countries that suddenly have secret heirs, it's like it didn't if this was like a fantasy, I'm fine with it. If it's maybe even historical, I can kind of give them the suspension of disbelief. But if it's a contemporary story and you've got a fake country that's some tiny little thing in the middle of Europe, it's like, no, we know the geography of Europe, people. And then you pop the secret heir in. It's like the prince, like you mentioned the Princess Diaries. That I mean, I haven't seen the movies, and I'm sure they're good movies, but that that fake country with the secret heir just bugs the heck out of me. So yeah.
Yeah, if you're not going to be able to roll with the premise, then the rest of the story doesn't have a shot with you.
Okay, so and you've got a couple of other things too. You've got like the hidden heir that was secreted away, and you've got like the body double and the lost or the lost twin variant on the secret heirs. They can all get very cliche in a lot of ways. So how when you're dealing with these tropes that people do like, how do you avoid the cliches?
Well, I think first you have to learn your cliches. Like you should be steeped in what you're trying to write. If you're trying to write a gothic romance, you should have read quite a few of them and have a sense of what the tropes and cliches are so that you can use, abuse and subvert them and however you want. So yeah, step 1 for whatever you're trying to write is read a lot of it. So that you're not uh only ankle deep in the water, acting like that's deep enough to be able to actually craft something lasting and worth reading.
Yeah, that's good advice is to know the cliches so you don't use them.
Right, or that you're not using them unconsciously. Like you
Yeah.
might choose to use one, it might fit your story and you might make good narrative use of it, but it's a conscious choice, not something that you just kind of didn't notice. You didn't leave it unexamined.
Yeah, I mean, there's not necessarily anything wrong with using a cliche, but if it's just sitting there and you're not, like you said, you're not examining it and you're not integrating it into the story, I think that it just becomes kind of like this sore thumb sticking out of your story.
Yeah, I could see that.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap the show up here because it was a
Okay.
good discussion, and you can tell everybody where they can find you in your books and when this Secret Heir book is coming out, maybe.
So I'm Samantha Bryant. I'm best known for my Menopausal Superheroes series, which does not have any secret heirs, but does have mad scientist and unexpected side effects to menopausal products. I also write a lot of short horror, and I'm writing romance coming out this spring. So the book I signed up because I was thinking, oh, I'd love to talk about the Secret Heir because I'm writing one, is a gothic romance called The Architect and the Heir that I wrote most of and then had to put down to meet some other deadlines, and that I'm hoping to bring out next summer. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll be
and finding me. You can find me if you know my name. SamanthaBryant.com. Google Samantha Bryant author so that you get me and not the actress. I try to be easy to find.
well, we should all be looking forward to the gothic romance site coming out
Thank you.
because we all know that you will handle the Secret Heir well. So,
Oh, I'm excited about it. It's going to be fun.
okay, and that's it for this episode. I'd like to thank you for being a guest. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Nice to talk with you too. Thanks.
And remember, it's always time to go indie now.